Hey everyone, I'm Liz Ferry, and today I'm going to continue my crochet doll with a thicker body type. In part 1, I showed you the upper half of the doll's body. In this part, I'll show you how to finish the upper half of the body, and how to make the arms. In part 3, I'll show you how I made the lower half of the body. You can find a link to part 1 of this series in the description below. You can also find a link to the written pattern for this project in my Ravelry store. Now let's go ahead and continue where I left off at the back of the work. I had just finished making the doll's armholes, and I had just begun to increase to create the bust. As you can see, the armhole has added these curves to the sides of the doll. In this next row, to make the sides more straight, I'm going to decrease into the stitches right before and right after the armholes. And I'm going to skip the first and last chains of the armholes. And that's going to just even out the row a little. So I'm going to single crochet until I reach the stitch that's 2 stitches before my chain. Alright, now I'm going to decrease the 2 stitches before the chain together. Then I'll skip the first chain, then I'll single crochet into the next 2 chains, the second and third chain. And then I'll skip the last chain, which is the 4th chain. And I'll decrease again into the 2 stitches after my chains. Alright, next I'm going to continue to increase the bust in between the armholes. If you want your doll's bust to be really small, you could start to decrease here instead of increase to end the doll's bust, but I'm going to continue to make mine bigger for a couple more rows, so I'm going to increase 4 on each side again. First I'll single crochet until I reach the front, then I'm going to do my first 4 increases, and then single crochet a couple of times in between. And then do 4 more increases on this side. Alright, now I'm going to single crochet until I get to the stitch that's 2 stitches before the next armhole, where I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the other side. I'm going to decrease those stitches, then skip the first and last chain. So here at the next armhole, I've done my first decrease. Now I'm going to skip the next chain, and single crochet into the 2 middle chains. Then skip the last chain, and decrease the next 2 stitches together. If you made the armholes bigger, it'll be exactly the same, just decrease the 2 stitches before and after the chain, skip the first and last chain, and single crochet into the chains in the middle. In the next row, I'm going to continue to increase the bust. If you want your doll's bust to be a bit smaller, you could start to decrease here instead of increase to end the doll's bust, but I'm going to continue to make mine a little bigger for one more row. So I'm going to single crochet until I reach the front. Then I'll increase 4 on each side again, with a couple of stitches of single crochet in the middle. Then I'll single crochet until the end of the row. Alright, I finished my row. Now in this next row, I'm going to start to decrease the bust. If you want a doll with a larger bust than this, you could keep adding rows of increase until the bust reaches a size you like. Just make sure to decrease the bust by doing the opposite of what you did to increase the bust. So I'm going to decrease 4 times per side for 3 rows, since I increased 4 times per side for 3 rows. But if you added less than 8 stitches to your doll's bust, you should decrease that same number. So I'm going to single crochet until I get to the front. Then pull up a loop through the next 2 stitches, and decrease, and I'm going to do that 3 more times on this side. Alright, now I'm going to single crochet a couple of times in between. And then decrease 4 more times on the other side. Alright, I finished my decreases. Now I'm going to single crochet until the end of the row. Okay, I've finished my first row decrease at the bust. I'm going to do 2 more rows to decrease the bust, since I did 3 rows to increase the bust. So I'm just going to single crochet until I get to the front, where I'm going to decrease 4 times per side again. And then I'm going to single crochet until the end of the row. Then I'll repeat that process for one more row. Now I've finished my row decreasing the bust, so at this point I'm going to fold in the middle to create a more realistic cleavage look. If you don't want to do this, you could just add fiber fill to the entire bust area without folding in the middle, but for this doll I'm going to add fiber fill to each side and leave the middle folded in. Now I'm going to increase to make the waist size larger. I'm going to increase 3 times per side at the sides of the body, and at the same time I'll also increase 3 times at the front of the body to create the stomach. And then I'm going to do 2 rows of normal single crochet. I'm going to repeat this pattern a couple of times to make the doll's body get gradually more wide. I'm going to do a row of 9 increases with 2 rows of normal single crochet in between. So in this row, I'm going to increase 3 times per side at the sides of the doll, and increase 3 times at the front. When I create the increases at the front of the body, I'll try to space them out a little instead of placing 3 increases all next to each other at the very middle of the stomach. I find that if you place the increases all at the middle without spacing them out, the doll's body almost has a more pregnant belly look, instead of just a plain chubby stomach. That's fine if you want that look, but for this doll I'm going to space my increases out at the front by placing 1 increase more to one side, with a single crochet in between, then placing another increase right in the middle, then another single crochet in between, and then 1 more increase more to the other side. And then I'll do my 3 increases on the other side, then I'll do 2 rows of plain single crochet in between my rows of increase. And then I'll do 1 more row of increase, 3 times per side at the sides of the body, and 3 times at the front, once again spacing out the increases at the front. You could continue for as long as you like, just do your row of increases or decreases, then do 2 normal rows in between, then do another row of increases or decreases, and then 2 normal rows in between, and so on until your doll's waist reaches the desired size. I just added 1 more row of increase to my doll. If you want the doll's waist and stomach to be a bit smaller, you could always add fewer increases per row, like 1 or 2 per side, and 1 or 2 for the stomach, or you could just increase the stomach and not the waist, or just increase the waist and not the stomach. If you want your doll to have a smaller sized waist, you could just decrease 1 to 3 times per side instead, depending on how small you want your doll's waist to be, or you could skip this step and just make the body more flat by adding no increases or decreases. Now I'm going to start to widen the doll's hips. I'm going to do this in pretty much the same way that I did the shoulders. I'm going to increase 2 times per side per row until I get the desired width for my doll's hips. If you want to make your doll's hips even bigger, you could increase 3 times per side, or if you want them smaller, just increase 1 per side. Or if you want them to stay flat, just continue to single crochet as normal. And if you want to narrow the doll's hips, just do decreases instead of increases. Now I'm going to do 2 rows of increase for the doll's hips, but you can go on for as many rows as you like. Okay, I've gotten to the end of my row of increase, and now I'm just going to pull open this loop, and I'm going to continue with the other half of the body later. Next, I'll make the arms. Since I'm still not finished using this end of my yarn to make the body, I'm going to put this aside and use the opposite end to make the arms. I've started my doll's arms the same way I started the head in part 1 with a magic circle with 6 stitches of single crochet. If you want to see how to make a magic circle in more detail, check out my Beginner's Crochet Lessons series. You could use a couple of methods to begin your work, like a chain 3 and slip stitch, or a single magic circle. I'm going to use a double magic circle because it's just more secure and neater looking, but if you use another method, like a chain 3 and slip stitch, you can always just sew the hole closed when you're done, so you should use whatever method you prefer. Now I have a magic circle with 6 stitches. This is about as wide as I want my doll's hand to be, so I don't need to increase, but if you're making a larger doll, you could increase here, the same way that you increased the head in part 1, to make the hands larger. If you want to learn how to increase or decrease, or if you just want more practice with increasing and decreasing, check out my increasing and decreasing tutorials in my Crochet Lessons for Beginners series. The link to those will be in the description below. Next, I'm just going to single crochet for a couple of rows until I get to where I want the wrist to go. I'm going to single crochet for 2 rows. First, I'm going to find the chain that counts as the first stitch in the magic circle, and single crochet into that stitch. Then mark it as the first stitch of the next row. Then I'm going to continue to single crochet for 2 rows. I finished my 2 rows of plain single crochet for the hand. Now I'm going to create the wrist. So to do that, I'm going to decrease 1 time per side per row until I get the width I want for the wrist. I've already done the first stitch of the row, so now I'm going to decrease the next 2 stitches together. And then I'm going to single crochet normally in between my decreases, and then decrease 1 more time. I'm just going to decrease for 1 row, but you can go on for as many rows as you like. You don't have to do this if you want. You could just single crochet as normal for a more simple arm, but I like to do this just to shape the arm a little more realistically. Alright, I've finished decreasing for the wrist. Now I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to increase 1 time per side per row until I get the width I want for the arm. I'm just going to go on for 1 row because that's how much I decreased in the last row, but you can do the reverse of what you did to decrease for the wrist. Or if you didn't decrease for the wrist, just skip this step and continue to single crochet as normal. Next, I'll create the forearm. To do that, I'm going to increase every other row so that the arm gets bigger little by little. So I'm going to single crochet normally for one row before I do my increase. I'm going to do just one row of single crochet in between each row of increase for this part, but if you like, you could add more rows of single crochet if you want the arm to get wider more gradually, or you could skip the row of single crochet if you want the arm to get wider more quickly. In the next row, I'm going to increase just one time to slightly widen the arm. Then I'm going to continue to single crochet until the end of the row. Then I'll do another row of regular single crochet before my next row of increase. Next, I'll create another row with one increase, but I'm going to offset my increases so that they're not all on the same side. So I'm going to single crochet for a few stitches, and then I'm going to do my increase here on the other side of the work. Then single crochet until the end of the row. And I'll repeat that pattern one more time. I'll do one row of plain single crochet, then I'll do another row with just one increase, and remember to keep offsetting each increase so that they aren't always in the same spot. For my doll's forearm, I ended up increasing 3 rows total with a row of single crochet in between. Next, I'm going to create the elbow the same way that I made the wrist. I'm going to decrease one time per side for one row, then increase one time per side for one row. And just like with the wrist, you can do more than one row if you like, or you could just skip this step and do a regular row of single crochet for a more simple arm. Now I'm going to make the upper arm in the same way that I did the forearm. I'm going to single crochet for a row, and then I'm going to increase one time in the next row. I'm going to repeat this 2 more times again for the upper arm, but you can go on for as long as you like until your arm is wide enough. For my doll's upper arm, I ended up increasing 3 rows total, with a row of single crochet in between. If you want a longer arm after you've already finished increasing the arm to the right width, you can just continue to add rows of single crochet until the arm is the right length. For this doll though, I don't need to add any more rows of single crochet. So now I'm just going to end this arm. If you want, you could just slip stitch to the next stitch of the row and cut off your arm if the arm is both long enough and wide enough. But for my doll, since I made the upper arm thicker than the armhole, I'm going to decrease for a row until the top of the arm is about the same width as the armhole. You don't have to do this if your doll's arms are the same width of your doll's armholes already. So I'll decrease 1 time per side for just 1 row. If you like, you could decrease for more than 1 row, depending on the size of your doll. And finally, I'm going to slip stitch to the first stitch to end the row. I'll cut off a long tail of my yarn, and I'm going to use that tail to sew the arm to the armhole later. But first, I'm going to repeat the same thing to create another arm. Alright, I've finished making both arms. Next, I'll create the wire skeleton to give my doll a bit more structure. I've made another video showing you how to create the skeleton if you want to see how I made it in more detail. You can find the link to that tutorial in the description below. I made a skeleton with a 5-inch spine, 2 5-inch arms placed about 2.5 inches down from the top of the spine, and 2 7-inch legs placed at the bottom of the spine. And then I'm going to add the skeleton to my doll. I finished making about halfway down the doll's body before making the arms and legs, so now I'm going to take each of the arms of the skeleton and bend them so that they're reaching up. Then I'm going to insert them through the armholes of the doll like it's putting on a shirt. Then once the arms are through, I'm going to pull the neck up into the head of the doll. And now the skeleton is inside the doll. Next, I'll add some fiber fill to the doll's body and arms. Then slip the arms over the wire skeleton's arms and sew them to the armholes. Now I'm going to attach the skeleton to the doll so that it doesn't shift out of place. This is entirely optional if you want to skip this step, so I'll show you how I did this using the arms since I've already made them, but I'll do the same thing with the legs and the head of this doll later once I'm done. First, I'm going to find the loop at the end of the arm, Then I'm going to push the loop at the end out of the material. Then I'm going to use a yarn needle and some yarn of the same color, and I'm going to sew the end of the loop to the doll's arm. And once I finish sewing, I'm just going to push that loop back inside the doll, and I'm going to sew in this end. I'm going to do the same thing with each end of the wire skeleton. And I'll do the same thing to the other arm. Later, I'll do the same thing to attach the head and the feet to the skeleton. Now the upper body of my doll is complete. In the next video, I'll show you how to finish the doll. If you're interested in the written pattern for this project, you can find a link to my pattern store on Ravelry, where you can find all of my designs in the description below. You can also use this half of the doll's body with my mermaid doll design, or with my centaur doll design to make a mermaid or centaur. I'll put the link to both of those videos in the description below. The exact number of stitches and rows will probably be different, since the doll I'm using as a base is much larger than the original dolls I used in those tutorials, but the general technique should all be the same. If you enjoyed this tutorial, you could press the like button or share it on social media, and if you'd really like to help out the channel, you can donate to my Patreon. You can get some pretty cool perks through Patreon, like seeing my videos early, access to some of my prototype patterns, and discounts in my Ravelry store depending on your level of donation. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/fairyrings. You could also subscribe and click the bell icon so that you don't miss the next video in this series. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!